Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be speaking with the organizer of the annual Pacific Women's Herbal Conference, which is located in Monroe, Washington. It's a gathering of women healers, lovers of green, and the goddess within. We're going to be talking about earth-centered healing, optimum nourishment, and local plants. We're also going to be discovering what a wise woman herbalist in the making of herbal infusions and the healing benefits of the powerful herb known as Hawthorn. Joining us here to talk about the Pacific Women's Herbal Conference is our special guest today, Eagle Song Evans Gardner. Thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Good morning, Daniel. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, tell us about how you first came to, I guess, become the wise woman herbalist as you're talking about here.
Well, I actually came to it because I'm what I would call a positive contrary. I could see as a young woman that the culture I lived in was not quite fitting my sense of purpose, and so I was told by my mom to go outside and play often as a young child, and became quite inured with nature, and realized that when I was in nature, I actually felt a sense of wholeness and appreciation and being appreciated. And so I spent a lot of time as a child and as an adult outside. So wondering how could I take care of myself beyond just playing outside. I was fascinated by the way plants interacted in our lives over time, and so just started to pursue a path that seemed somehow familiar, and ended up becoming a wise woman herbalist, because wise women, a tradition of healing, is one based in nourishment, and that felt very comfortable to me.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense as to what a wise woman herbalist becomes. And tell us what that means to you.
Well, it just, my interest in anthropology and sociology, I really was fascinated by the intersection between plants and people. And I wanted to know simple things. As I grew older and had children of my own, I wanted to understand how I could take care of those beings in my life. And so it meant to me that I would ask questions like, well, what did people do in earlier times to take care of their children? And when I started tracking through old herbals and information about just daily care, it opened green doors that I could have never imagined. And so I raised two sons and a tremendous amount of livestock, and herbs were our primary care modality. So it offered me a broader perspective. I think that's the part I love the most, is that nature offered a broader perspective of the world I live in, and then that increased the perspective I had about myself and others in that world.
Now, it's interesting to hear the term wise woman, as I've had actually wise woman herbalist Susan Weed on our program here a couple of times. And it's really interesting to discover what that exactly means for the listeners out there. This is more than just identifying, well, there's the plant, this is what it does, and certainly if you prepare it this particular way, you'll be able to enjoy the benefits of what this can bring to you. But she actually goes to a whole higher level of what the wise woman way is about all of this. Describe for our listeners what exactly it means to be a wise woman herbalist.
Oh, that's a great question, Daniel. Yes, Susan did take the concept of wise woman healing to a higher level, but she also took it to a deeper place, a place that's really connected with earth. And I think when women really start to feel their connection with the earth, when they really start to think about the rhythm of the moon and their moon cycles and how their relationship to earth is one of intimacy and connection, that then there is something that is triggered within them. And I often think it resides in the heart, which is great because Hawthorn is what we're going to visit today. And so when that connection's made, a guiding light seems to go on in women, and then they have a sense of place and a sense of purpose in their life. No matter what they're doing, where they're at, they just seem to know what is the right thing for them to do. So it's a very individual path. At the same time, it's the oldest path of healing on the planet.
And that's what I found really intriguing, is to realize this has been around for as long as it has. As you say, it's the oldest tradition there is. Tell us more about that.
Well, when we look at different ways of approaching health, and I think that approach is a really good term to describe these different ways. Susan delineated 3 ways which helped me to understand better just the approach different ways of thinking have when we actually are moving into our lives. So in the scientific approach, we would really be driven by curiosity, our deep need to understand and know what's going on around us. So there's a profound sense of wanting to know. I think as human beings, we're all curious, and that need to know is what drives the scientific tradition. And then there's a heroic tradition. We also want to have mentors and heroes that we can follow and that have laid a course for us, a pathway that we can look at, and determine what could be a way for us to move forward in our lives. That pathway actually has been a little bit, influenced, I guess, by dividing the world into a duality of good and bad or right and wrong. And so to get through the maze of that and still seek mentors and deeper ways of understanding can become challenging. And then there's the wise woman tradition, which basically is a tradition of nourishment, and that's the tradition that incorporates scientific and heroic traditions of healing and recognizes that we are intelligent beings and we have access to information in many different layers of our being. And so it's a layered and multifold way of approaching life and health and our way of being in the world. So that is my understanding of how those traditions have informed humanity through time. And the wise woman tradition, the one of nourishment, is by far and away the longest tradition of healing on the planet.
It's so fascinating and very exciting all at the same time, too. Now, when you talk about, you had mentioned Hawthorn. First of all, specifically, what is that?
Hawthorn is a small kind of shrubby tree that actually grows around the planet at the northern latitude right here in Portland and Seattle area. And all around the globe at this latitude, hawthorns of various and sundry derivations are found. In fact, there's over 1,000 different hawthorns that have been identified. And everywhere that hawthorn grows, the people highly esteem the plant as a healing attribute to their lives. So I actually kind of stumbled upon hawthorn in an odd kind of way. It's a tree that has been, the way plants work with me, and I have to say that it's the plants that are my first teachers. They kind of call me to them, and then I basically set up a practice of listening to what they're all about. I guess that's what I'd say, and I do that by visiting them several times a year and watching their growth over time. So hawthorn, crataegus, had a very strong pull on me, and it was really about heart medicine. It was really about having the courage to live in the challenging times that we live in now. And so the tree became an ally, and an ally is something that gives us support, but we don't become dependent on it. So So Hawthorn is now probably my best herbal ally.
So Hawthorn, it sounds like, is a healer of the heart?
Hawthorn is a healer of the heart, and also a healer of everything that corresponds with the heart and the body. And so in the Chinese tradition, Hawthorn would be used for digestion. But that is a nourishing tradition, and so they recognize that if digestion is in order, then the rest of the body basically can assimilate the foods that are coming to it and use them in ways to strengthen. In the Western tradition, Hawthorn is more looked at as a heart remedy, and in that way, the pumping of the heart is improved, the strength of the heart is improved by the ongoing use of Hawthorn. Veins are cleared of debris with the use of Hawthorn, and so there's just a lot of ways that the tree and people come together, where I say the magic and the medicine meet. And so physiologically, it lowers blood pressure. The use of Hawthorn is it actually strengthens the muscle of the heart so that it can beat stronger but not faster. In fact, it actually will slow the heartbeat because the clearing of the coronary arteries allows the blood to flow through the veins easier. And so with a stronger pump and clearer veins, there's just more of all the richness that goes out into the extremities of the body. And at 64, and having a father who underwent 3 open-heart surgeries, I was looking for another way. And I am grateful for those surgeries and my dad. It meant that I got to enjoy him for 30 more years in his life, but we both could see that there had to be another way that we could approach health that might serve our world better.
I know it's interesting that we're finding we're moving into a day and age. I think it's because so much information is so easily available to us at our fingertips of finding ways to heal thyself, if you will. That must be very exciting to know that people are moving in that direction and taking more personal responsibility for what happens in their lives.
It is exciting. To me, then we move away from retreating from life, and we see life as an adventure that we're heading into, and we're excited by it, and we really want to engage in life. And on a personal level, after using Hawthorn for the last 5 years as an intimate ally, I can truly see that with a stronger heart, my world has brightened. And if anything, the world certainly could use some brightness right now.
There's no doubt about that. We can certainly use a lot of healing in our heart, couldn't we?
We can, because the heart, in the word courage, it means the heart. The heart is the home of courage in our bodies. And a lot of people are beginning to realize that the heart might be the more intelligent of the organs rather than the brain. And so I kind of perceive that as there's a resonance between certain plants and certain areas of understanding within our humanness. And the heart and Hawthorn just really go together. In fact, you could think of it this way. There were some people on an island in Europe that decided they really needed to move away from the conditions that they were living under. And they chose to name the ship that they were going to go on the Mayflower. Mayflower is a common name in England for the hawthorn. These people actually believed the world was flat. To get on a boat and sail away took tremendous courage, and I applaud them for wrapping themselves in the Mayflower to proceed on their journey. And it seems kind of analogous to our times, that we too might want to bring that Mayflower into our lives and strengthen our hearts so that we can take a stand and that we can move forward in a joyful adventure, which is, to me, what life is about.
You know, that's so true, too, especially as we get to a point in our lives, midlife, if you will, where we realize that we have lived many, many years pretty much doing what others have told us is the right way to be doing things. We've discussed on this program that it seems like school is one of those areas where we're always out there looking to please do the right thing and make sure that we get the best results that we can through tests and doing our homework and obeying our teachers in class. And we carry that into the world and realize that after a while in the world, so to speak, that just doesn't serve us as well as we might have thought it was supposed to. And so then we find ourselves sort of wondering, well, what's my next step? And that takes a lot of courage to step outside of the way of pleasing to come to a place where you can become more self-satisfied with the kind of decisions that you make.
Gosh, Daniel, that really speaks to, beyond 50s. I mean, the audience that we're speaking to in this program.
It's like that Twisted Sister song, isn't it? We're not going to take it.
Well, we've learned over time that we were actually on the right track as teenagers. And we've circled around. We've gone around that circle, and we've seen a lot in our lives. We've seen a lot. And now we're at a point, and this is where Hawthorn and people that are our age, but Hawthorn's really suitable for everybody. It is not just a plant for older people. It's actually a plant that can be used throughout one's life and has been traditionally around the world. But it's especially important for us as elders to really proceed as if we're needed, to really realize that perhaps our young people are really looking for someone who can guide them in a way that does proclaim our individuality. At the same time, we're connected to a planetary reality that we have a lot of influence in.
Now, as you used Hawthorn to heal the heart, you've got a personal story on this, I know, and I'd like for you to share with our listeners, but how exactly do you prepare something like this, and what can someone expect as they use Hawthorn, I guess?
All right. That's a great question. There are a lot of ways to bring Hawthorn into one's daily life. And the first thing I would recommend to people is whatever way works for you. If you buy it at the health food store, at the herb shop, then that's the way to start. Also, to look in your neighborhood, get familiar with what the plant looks like in different herb books or online, and then start looking in your neighborhood to see where you might find Hawthorn. I live in a farming valley, so there's a lot of remnant hedges that hawthorns inhabit. And even in cities, hawthorn is used a lot as a street tree, so it's available to everyone. It's accessible by everyone. And so you can use it as a tea by just making a short infusion of the leaf and flower. Or you can use it as a healing herbal infusion where you would take 1 ounce of the leaf and flower, put it in a quart jar, pour boiling water over it, make it a quart canning jar so it can do the heat. Pour the boiling water on, stir it, put a lid on, let it steep 4 to 8 hours. What we're doing here is moving minerals from the plant material into the water, which is the primary solvent for anything that we're going to eat. Water is a really great way to extract nutrients. And so with long steeping, 4 to 8 hours, 1 ounce herb in 1 quart water, let it steep overnight, and then that 1 quart of that tea can be used 2 to 3 times a week, a quart a day. Tincture, you can make a tincture by just infusing the fresh berries or even dried berries with alcohol. And we just use 100 proof vodka. It's easy to get, and people can access that. Herb vinegars are another great way to use the hawthorn berry or the leaf and flower by just putting the leaf and flower or berries into a jar and then pouring apple cider vinegar over that and letting it steep for 4 to 6 weeks. And then you can strain it or not. Syrups, you can do a syrup extraction with honey or sugar and water, and then simmer the berries, and you'd have a very nice syrup, which can go into all kinds of ways. And you can also ferment the berries as wine. So there's just a lot of ways, and country people around the world have actually used all of these ways to bring hawthorn into their life on a daily basis, or at least 2 to 3 times a week. So it becomes a really important food and medicine in a person's life. All simple ways, by the way, that anyone can actually do in their own home, which is one of the things that I'm really, I delight in sharing ways that people can access herbs and keep them in their hearts, homes, and hands.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that we touched briefly on wise woman, and it's interesting. I'd like more clarity for our listeners out there on what that means, and I'll say this. I remember, and I still have the book here, it was, as we mentioned earlier, talking about wise woman Susan Weed. Very, very articulate, especially when it comes in the ways of what is known as wise woman. But it was interesting in her book, I think it was called Wise Woman's Way, is that, you know, certainly you can go out, let's say, and identify a dandelion, or in this case, we're talking about hawthorn. You can certainly know how to take it, break it down, and use it, and come to know and experience the benefits of what this does for you. But you take it to a whole different level about what it means to be a wise woman. Let's go with clarification on what that actually means.
Well, like I said earlier, it's going to be different for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and the wise woman tradition includes men. It's not just a woman tradition. It's a tradition of healing that is really about community. It's really about strengthening our relationship with the planet and with other people in our world. And you know, I'm now 64. I have 3 granddaughters, so this tradition gets richer and richer and richer in my life. When I think about ways that I can interface and interplay, I like that word a lot, with my granddaughters, ways that I can transfer information about healing to them through playful interaction when they're young. All of these remedies that we make and foods that we make can be done by anybody of any age and any gender. And so the wise woman tradition is really about putting health back into our own hands, back into our own gardens, back into our own lives, and everyone has access to it. And that, I think, is the personal message for me, is I became more powerful in my own being and in my own life when I realized that I could take care of myself and I could take care of my people.
And that things were a lot of fun, too.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, really, it's so much fun when I go out to harvest the leaf and flower in the spring of the hawthorn trees. Crataegus species would be the name in the botanical nomenclature. So Crataegus means hard wood. It's a wood that's been used through time to hold things together, like the pins in chairs that would hold the different parts of the chair together. Crataegus would be a wood that would be good for that. And so I actually am out. It's a sunny day. You have to go on a sunny day, or at least a cloudy day with no rain. And the trees are just vibrant and alive and filled with insects and filled with birds. And on occasion, I've been harvesting the same hedgerow for over 20 years. And so we have a long personal relationship, those trees and I. I really trust them. I find things there. I'm always surprised. And this is the part that if my granddaughters were with me last spring, we would be going out and looking at, picking our flowers and doing our thing. And then all of a sudden I heard the sounds of little whimpers and small yelps. And I came around one of the trees, and there was a nest filled with coyote puppies.
Wow.
That's a thing you'll never forget. That is like the mystery unveiling herself in the most incredible way. And, of course, the child in me wanted to just go right over there and pet those puppies. They were so cute. They still had their eyes closed. They were that young. And then the woman in me said, whoa, these are somebody's babies, and she's somewhere. You better get out of here, girl. And so it was that place of really honoring nature, being given the gift to see something so amazing, and then honoring that was something precious, and I did not belong there, and to take myself away from that place. I've also been asked by the trees to lay down on the ground. And I'm thinking, no, I'm at work. I've got to keep doing this. I'm going. Got to get all these plants in so I can do whatever. And the tree would very sternly say, lay down now. And so I would lay under the trees and I would look up. And then I realized, oh my word, these trees are so filled with life. There's small butterflies, there's bees, there's birds. There's just this amazing thing. And so Hawthorn, in my own personal pilgrimage with plants through history and time, took me to England twice and France once because I really wanted to understand the hedge. What is this place, the hedge? And it's the thing in England, 350,000 miles of hedge run through the English countryside, and hawthorn is the main tree in those hedges. And they have found in England that the hedge is the green ribbon of life that actually weaves together the whole countryside because there are so many plant species. They're like highways of greenness that four-legged and winged ones and insects and creepy crawlies, everybody is moving through the hedge as if it was a highway. And it has kept diversity surrounding their farm fields and countryside in such a way it is now illegal to cut hedges in England. And in France, the hedge was so powerful that in World War II, the invasion of Normandy, that the hedges were so complex and so strong that the tanks could not even get through them. That did complicate things for the people at that time, which I'm sorry for, but the hedge itself is hard wood, brings courage, holds us together. These are the things that I think are really important for us to look at in our world today. How do we increase biodiversity? How do we increase farmland so that it's effectively producing the food that the people in areas of the world can eat? Really fun stuff. It means you get to go out and play. You go out and see your local farmers at the farmers markets. It's just a great way to live.
Mm-hmm. You know, and you bring up something that I think is very valuable, as I was trying to allude to earlier, is that this is beyond just looking at something and realizing I can take this and have this health benefit. But it goes beyond that to where you're talking about being in communication and actually merging with the spirit of the plant so that you can really hear and have a conversation with this wonderful, marvelous being that lives here in symbiosis with us. I mean, we're all in this together.
That's beautiful, Daniel.
I'm
exactly how I feel.
Yeah. I'm remembering, you know, when I was reading in Wise Woman's Way about that, is she says, you know, you can simply do this, and that's fine, or you can take it to this level where you actually come to know and respect the spirit of the plant itself. And I just remember, you know, some years ago I was just kind of sitting outside enjoying the moon, so to speak, and I was thinking about, you know, how did the ancients come to know the varieties of plants out there to be able to be used for healing and energy and life itself? And one of the conclusions that I came to is that these plants sort of dreamed themselves into the existence of the medicine person, I guess, if you will. And I thought, you know, that's kind of interesting because a lot of times people might think of as a plant, a tree, a flower, a grass, whatever the case is that being outside of them, being separate from them, when in fact we're really in this together, as I was saying earlier, And if you learn to be attuned to what's going on there, you can hear some marvelous stories, as she definitely shares in her book.
Indeed, yeah. Susan's book, The Big Green Book for Everyone, called Healing Wise, is a really excellent doorway into cultivating relationship with the world of the green. Mm-hmm. Really beautiful. And in the teachings that I've been blessed to receive, the plants are our mothers and fathers. The plants came and got the planet ready for us. You know, all of our clothing, all of our shelter for our houses in earlier times, and even still quite a bit today, the clothing we wear, the shelter we live in, the food we eat, it's plant-based. And so that idea of separation is relatively new. In the wise woman tradition, which is, of course, the ancient tradition, people weren't separate. And by walking through the green door, I came to a place in my life, and I've seen it with many, many, many other people, that when they go through that door and they really immerse themselves in the plant, what I would say kingdom, that we are all related, we're all in this together, that sense of separation begins to disappear. And that in and of itself, to feel that you're in place somewhere, that you're in yourself and you're in a place where you belong, is an amazingly healing feeling. And the plants, what we call allies, the ones that we use on regular basis in the Wise Woman tradition, these are plants we use on a daily, ongoing basis through our whole life. Somehow there's a resonance in those plants that starts to quicken inside of my human body and the other women and men that I've done this with and talked with over time. And we're talking 3 and 4 decades of use in this way. So we actually have a lot of ground time and experiential information that we're sharing. And it's just absolutely phenomenal what now people are actually receiving in the transmission from plant to human interface.
Mm-hmm. You know, I can't help but bring this up. The marijuana laws. Okay, we're seeing a lot of legalization of this plant here and a lot of excitement around that. I can't help but think, first of all, as you think of marijuana as people like to use it recreationally, we're not talking medicinally, but recreationally, is that one of the benefits it has is that you tend to forget, okay? Now, I can't help but bringing this up because look at the world we live in. Everywhere you look, especially for those people who live in the city, there's so much noise, there's so much distraction, there's so much advertising, there's so much communication going on. You can see why something like this seemed to have emerged in such a way that it almost becomes necessary for us to shut all that down. You know, go to a place that's quiet and come to a place where you forget about all that information and all that stimulus that you took in. It almost seems reasonable that something like this would emerge with such excitement for all of us to finally say, okay, maybe we've had enough and let's go back to communing with nature again and just quiet all of this nonsense down.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean,
doesn't it?
And imagine this. I mean, you know, now we're in our 60s, and we were the first generation of people that really interfaced with marijuana on a recreational level. Mm-hmm. And there was, when I was in high school, there were 2 factions. Well, there were 3 factions. There was the kids that drank, the kids that smoked, and the kids that did neither. And I don't think it really has changed that much over time.
There's just more news telling us and making it seem like there's more of us doing that, but it's pretty much the same.
I think so. I think so. And we just wanted equal time, you know. The people who love plants wanted their recreational, there's a fancy word called entheogen things, but remember that people all over the world through all time have had plants that help them to move into different layers of reality.
Sure.
Even if they lived in the jungle, which was not busy compared to what we think of as busy in our world, that perhaps it's not as much about forgetting as it is about remembering.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's allowing us, those plants. And, I actually think, Daniel, that the plants, in some funny way, I am an independent thinker and I am certainly an independent acting person, but that I actually believe, as I've gotten closer and closer with plants and more intimate with them, that they inspire me toward actions in my life I might not have thought of on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so two things that I think about are the whole idea about fermented food. And now, with Lynn Margulis's work, that our bodies are actually more comprised of microbes than they are of us. And with physics the way it's going, that we're more space than we are matter. Is it possible then that the microbes who have those very short lifespans are actually getting us to make fermented foods so that they have a place to live on the planet?
Right.
And so the more we eat those foods, the more we become in tune with the nature of our own being on a physical way, but also it helps inspire our thoughts, because even the way science is going, where the digestive tract and the brain are being connected, and of course what's right in the middle is the heart. So I don't know where that all is going to lead us, but it does seem like as a species on the planet, we're going through some kind of an amazing cycle at this point in time, and really the heart and courage to engage that change. Things are changing. Whatever the cause is less of concern to me than how well we adapt to those changes, and how can we leave something behind for those coming after us.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's that expanded perspective. It's taking reductionist thinking, which forced us down into very small compartmentalized ways of looking at things, and expanding them back. And truthfully, marijuana as a recreational plant, although I think that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it, but the use of that plant has that ability to create that expansive feeling and view of the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that, too, but and speaking of that particular plant going beyond the recreational use, the health benefits of that plant are tremendously amazing as a superfood.
Well, how do you mean that, Daniel?
Well, it was a particular farmer up in Washington, and that's exactly what he farms. But they removed the component of THC, and he says, as a superfood, putting it in a smoothie, it just brings you tremendous health benefits. He didn't totally elaborate on that, but I'm starting to see more of that pop up as well, that people are looking at this far beyond the recreational look and looking at it as more of, how this plant really brings quite a bit of health.
Well, if we think of health as being separate and isolating, that is the scientific. You're extracting. You're actually moving in a way you're turning the plant into a drug.
Okay.
And from my perspective, wholeness is really an essential part of the holiness and sacredness of our being in this planet, on this plane. And so plants that actually get to live under the sun and moon and stars, those are the ones that I would choose. To reduce something down to a small part of what it is, actually then we start thinking about plants as drugs, and then we start thinking about people as parts instead of as wholeness. And it isn't even that simple as this or that, because it's obviously both, in both ways, both approaches. Here we are at that different approach to health. They all work.
Mm-hmm.
They all work. And so that's that place of choosing what's going to work for each person, that place of personal choice and personal path.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just holding a place in the Wise Woman. Health, wholeness, holiness all go together, and holding that whole place for each and every plant and person is what I understand the Wise Woman tradition to be.
Mm-hmm. Now you've helped give clarity, as I was hoping you would, to our listeners out there. Because you look at exactly what I had just said, and that's the kind of message you tend to hear and see out there about these things. You watch talk shows, well, we're going to bring in the healing benefits of the blueberry, for instance, and they extract this thing down to this component of separate parts, and you think, but it's a blueberry. It comes from a very beautiful plant that grows this particular way, and you're missing the point here. And it can be very unnerving after a while when you pursue life that way as well.
Yes, I think that is well said. And I actually am a circular thinker and speaker, so I often warn my students that we're going to go on tangents. There is no point, in a sense, that we're going to take these tangents, and if indeed you find yourself lost, just you can let me know, and we'll go back to the point where there was a Y in the road and I went one way and you either stayed there or went a different way. We'll come back to that place, and then we can proceed again. It's because there's no place to go, And that's the other thing about a linear way of thinking, is that we're going somewhere. And it's useful. When I get in the car in the morning, I am going somewhere and I want to get there. But also to realize that we live in a world where it's just continually being born and dying and being born and dying, and embracing that is a huge part of our opportunity to engage being here now and really getting the pleasure, like you said about the blueberry, that there's so much more to the blueberry than whatever the small reduced thing is that's supposed to be good for our health. Let's go back to the blueberry plant and the place that it's at and all the butterflies and bugs that live with it, and realize that, wow, it's just the same for us. We're wholly who we are. Mm-hmm. We're part of a family, we're part of a community, and we belong here.
I'm reminded last night as we joined a friend of ours for dinner, and something as we were driving came up about GPS. And I found it was funny because what we were really talking about, it really started with the question to us was, how come you and your wife don't have a cell phone? And we got into it's just, we don't like to be tied to technology that much. When you really take a look at people with cell phones, they spend so much time looking at that, they don't really look around. I mean, that's it. It's right there. It's in their hands. You might as well be born with one in your hand anymore, right? But It came to the point of the GPS we were talking about, and I said, that's something I would never have in a car anyway. I really like to find my way to where I'm going. And, some people might say, for instance, well, what if you get lost? And there's no such thing as getting lost. You just found a different way to get to where you were going.
Oh, that's pretty funny. When I went to France and England, my daughter-in-law's parents loaned me their GPS unit, and I actually was on a pilgrimage, so I was very focused. I didn't know exactly what I was focused about, but a pilgrimage is, of course, going back and finding relics. And the GPS unit turned out to be, well, I actually named her Gypsy. I mean, that's what GPS says, right? And so the Gypsy and I were traveling through Europe, and I would go on, I like one-lane roads, especially if there's a hedge on both sides so you can't see anything. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe like going through the birth canal. But anyway, I'm going through all these places, and Gypsy always got me back to where I was wanting to be. So I started to trust her. I started to trust that this unit in the vehicle was not going to let me down, that I would always find my way. And so then I started playing the game of getting lost at least once a day. And then that was so much fun, I decided that I would start losing myself at least once a day. And so I have to say, I appreciate technology. I really am amazed by what it can do, and I also realize that if my telephone can help me find any place on the planet that the whole planet is now inside of a different kind of grid than I had imagined. But considering all the ancients and their wisdom, they knew that grid existed without the technology. And there's a part of me that believes if we actually understand that we can use that technology, the technology that's available today, to help us remember rather than to lead us astray, that might be a way that we could put it to good service.
Very much agreed. There's no doubt about that. And I know that as I'm online now, that you are organizing the Pacific Women's Herbal Conference, which will be held outside of Seattle, Washington. Tell us more about this conference here. Who's going to be there and what this is all about?
Well, it's really was my invitation to women in the Northwest region. We are the only region in the United States that doesn't have a women's herbal conference. And I actually did 3 of them with friends in the late 1990s, and they were so well received. My life took a different turn, so I stopped doing that, and now I'm back to where I have an opportunity to do it again. And so we're inviting all women, because women in the Wise Woman tradition are natural or native healers. They just know how to do it, because there's a wholeness and a connection to Earth, which is really being called for at this time in our world. And so coming together in a convivial way so that we can actually explore different things that we've been doing and trying out and using in our homes and the experiences we're having in our professions as herbalists and midwives and doulas and nurses, biologists, ethnobotanists. We have a lot of different women coming to this conference, and their interests pretty much spread across the whole way that people interface with plants. So the people coming are all women, but they're all interested in plants. That's our core connecting point. And then how it is that the plants are informing us is really what the dialogue is going to be about, the conversation. How is it that these plants are helping guide us in our movement through time and place? And how then do we come together as a group of people who care about where we live? So we've actually defined the Salish Sea drainage. The watershed of the Salish Sea is the area, the place on Earth that we're aligning ourselves with. That this is where we want to learn about the plants and have them learn about us, that there's that interface that goes both ways. And so, yeah, lots of different kinds of people. And oddly enough, Daniel, you cannot read, the GPS doesn't work at the camp.
Well, how about that?
I know, people have to do the old-fashioned thing of getting directions to find the camp.
Or a dividing rod.
Yeah, there you go. Now that will be good. You know, when they start showing up in horse and buggy, no, I don't think that will happen. But it's really an invitation to women who love plants to come together and celebrate. Number one, we're women. Number two, we've had a relationship with plants and the land and the earth for all time. So the name of the conference is Celebrating Women and Nature, Embracing Our Wisdom. And truly, Susan Weed and I have been colleagues for almost 3 decades now, and it's just a little mischief making for the West Coast.
Mischief making.
Yeah, I love it. It's like the hedge is where a lot of things go when they're not popular. They're not in the center, they're not the middle of the field. So they retreat to the hedge. And herbalism had done that, and women carried it forward through time. I jokingly say it was the women with 3 names that actually took herbalism across the desert when it was against the law to practice herbalism in America. That the women with 3 names just kept telling people how to do the recipes and how you could cook this and that. And in those stories, the truth of the fact that plants are healing additions to our life and part of what makes our life a rich and pleasurable experience, that came through those women. And then eventually we reemerged right around the time marijuana became popular, is when herbalism became popular, because a lot of the people who smoke marijuana said, wow, if that plant can do this, what do the rest of them do?
And as we've seen in the Northwest, barley and hops have certainly taken on a whole new meaning when it comes to crafting beer, right?
Absolutely, and that's the key word right there, I think, crafting. That we have a craft. That when we put our understanding of our relationship with plants back in that relationship that's crafty, that we can actually craft things that bring us great joy and pleasure and health in our lives. We can share them with others. We can come together to celebrate the turning of the seasons and our walk through time. We can think about the people who are standing behind us and want more than anything that we would succeed, and that we actually are becoming those ancestors ourselves, and that we think about the people who are coming after us, that we would want them to succeed. Then we have a place to stand together for this amazing planet that was first peopled by plants.
Now, how can people find out more about this Women's Herbal Conference?
Well, they can go to the PacificWomen'sHerbalConference.com. That's a website, and actually our registration is closed. We filled the camp, I'm pleased to say, and we will, but we will still be putting information on that website so that people can get ready for next year. We really love to find a bigger space and have more people join us.
Well, I have a feeling this is something that's going to certainly grow exponentially, I'm sure.
It's just the way it is with women,
The wise woman's way, so to speak. Eagle Song, it has certainly been a pleasure to have you here on the program. And please give out that website again for our listeners.
That would be the PacificWomen'sHerbalConference.com.
PacificWomen'sHerbalConference.com, okay.
Thank you, Daniel. I jumped in there. There's also a way that you can sign up for Walking Seeds, our mailing newsletter, and it will be erratic and ecstatic to begin with. So we will stay in touch with people about different offerings that the Pacific Wise Women will be doing in the future as well.
And for the listeners out there, when you visit the website, see if you can find where the dragon is.
Oh, excellent. You've been there.
That dragon, oh my, was something else. But I'm going to leave that for the listeners to discover for themselves. That's Pacific Wise Women's Herbal Conference, or Pacific Women's Herbal Conference, right?
That's it, PacificWomen'sHerbalConference.com.
I got the dragon in there and got the wise part and got a little carried away, which is precisely what a dragon might do if I get carried away with that Hawthorn, I'm sure.
Indeed, and I do hope you try the Hawthorn. You'll be surprised, I'm pretty sure, pleasantly so. And this is something that you don't just do for a little while or to heal or fix or treat something, but this is a plant medicine that you can use for the rest of your life. No matter what age you are, bring Hawthorn along on your journey.
Very good. Eagle Song, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
And thank you so much, Daniel. I've had a great time with you.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there. Get active, get involved, as we always encourage you to do, and you can discover more again by visiting the website PacificWomen'sHerbalConference.com. We'll also have more on our website at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50, and be sure to sign up for our free weekly e-news updates. You can also follow us on Twitter at Beyond50Radio and also like us on Facebook. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, live your day past halfway.